Welcome to the Happy Nightmares podcast.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick and welcome to another episode of the Happy Nightmares podcast where we talk about everything eerie, strange, and unexplained. In today's episode, we are tackling a topic that has already been mentioned a couple of times in previous episodes, and that is the significance of 3 a.m. and how this relates to paranormal experiences, specifically to hauntings. In folklore, the witching hour, or devil's hour, is a time of night typically between the hours of 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. This is associated with supernatural events where witches, demons, and ghosts are thought to appear and be at their most powerful. Black magic is thought to be most effective at this time due to the veil between worlds being thinner. It is believed that the phrase witching hour originated at least as early as 1775 in a poem titled Night, an Ode by Reverend Matthew West. I'm going to read an excerpt from that poem, and I'm probably going to pronounce some things wrong, so bear with me here. And see, bright Cynthia from the ethereal steep, on every mountain sheds a solemn gleam. Her trembling glories paint the watery deep, and add new luster to the silver stream, along whose banks at midnight's witching hour, so wayward fancy dreams, aerial beings pour. Yeah, I probably got some of that wrong, but man, poetry's weird. I've tried many times to get into poetry, and I just can't figure it out. I've written a lot of song lyrics, but nothing as deep as poetry tends to get into. Anyway, the origins of the phrase witching hour may actually date back even further, to around 1535, when the Catholic Church prohibited activities during the 3 to 4 a.m. time frame due to emerging fears about witchcraft in Europe. It is that Western Christian tradition which identifies the 3 a.m. hour as the period of potential peak supernatural activity. The phrasing, the devil's hour, was given as a mockery by inverting the time in which Jesus supposedly died on the cross, which was at 3 p.m. The number 3 would also be a mockery of the Holy Trinity, making this more of a satanic or demonic identification with the devil's hour as opposed to the witching hour, which is more generally related to the paranormal and not necessarily evil. Honestly, you will find many different suspected first uses of the phrase the witching hour or the devil's hour. Now, when I was young, I always thought that the witching hour was 12 a.m., midnight. Random story, I remember becoming quite confused in my youth while watching one of my favorite movies of all time, Casper, with Christina Ricci, and Dr. Paul Harvey states, "It's your hour," to the ghostly trio before the camera cuts to an outside scene where it's the middle of the day. I thought he was referring to the witching hour because it was Halloween in the movie and they were ghosts. But it wasn't night yet, so I was really confused, and it wasn't until much later that I realized he was referring to the fact that they were in a therapy session and the phrase, "it's your hour," was a joke that the patients are paying for the time so they can use it as they wish. In any case, what really happens during those wee hours of the morning that have caused so many to become believers in the witching hour? Is it just hive mentality? Are we proud members of the gullible squad, of which I could very easily be chairman of the board, just going along with the hype and believing because we like to believe? Well, let's look at it from a scientific approach. The time between 2 and 4 a.m. is said to be when we typically experience a peak in our REM sleep and when melatonin levels are at their highest within the human body. So what? Well, as you may know, REM is typically when we experience dreams. And so, if someone wakes in the early morning hours, say around 3 a.m., they could be in a mental state where their version of reality is more easily molded and contorted into potential visual or auditory hallucinations. This is kind of the basis for sleep paralysis, which is actually going to be the topic for next week's podcast episode, as I have more experience with that phenomenon than I care to think about, and all of the terrifying shenanigans that come along with it. So, just for the fun of it, I went through the subreddit r/paranormal to see if we could find any stories specifically about 3 a.m. And I did find a few. Some of them are better than others, but let's go through them and see if we find anything interesting. So the first one, posted by Reddit user photos_and_music. I woke up around 3 a.m. and couldn't fall asleep, and I felt a malicious presence in my room. I kept trying to fall asleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing a very intense visual of the people I care about brutally dying by some sort of force, and there was this very loud alarm. I also kept seeing a little devil child. It was speaking to me, though I can't remember what she was saying. Soon after, I shuffled a white noise playlist on Spotify to help me fall asleep, but I kept feeling this very intense evil vibration coursing through my body. I was completely awake, but I couldn't move and my breathing wasn't the best. It really felt like something was strangling me. I have woken up with random bloody scratches, bruises, and pain in the past. I have also played with black magic and Ouija boards, which I don't do anymore. Small objects have fallen off my shelf in my closet and my curtains moved or opened. Sometimes I do see translucent or white light figures around or outside the house. Sometimes, even when I go shopping, I see these spiritual figures at times. The attic is in my room, and I've heard very clear footsteps. Most of the time, these spirits are very welcoming and feel really nice, but sometimes it's just pure evil. So that story escalated quite a bit from beginning to end. We started with just them feeling a presence, and they couldn't fall asleep without seeing terrifying images. From there, a lot of what this user describes is very much right in line with sleep paralysis. Seeing the little devil girl, feeling an intense evil vibration, not being able to move but being completely awake, the feeling of being strangled, all of that lines up with common sensations that people experiencing sleep paralysis have to endure. From there, all of a sudden comes this list of things that this user has experienced: waking up with bloody scratches, bruises, and random pain, things falling off of shelves and curtains moving, seeing apparitions around the house, hearing footsteps in the attic, seeing apparitions of dead people out at the store. All of this topped off by the fact that this person has experimented with black magic and Ouija boards. I'm not gonna lie, as this story went on, it felt less and less believable. However, for the sake of this, let's assume that everything in this story is true. Whoever you are, move. Live somewhere else. Do you live alone? Is there anyone else who experiences these things? Do you just wake up in the morning like, crap, got another bloody scratch on my arm, you pesky spirits, we're at it again. I need some coffee. I'd be setting up cameras all over the place. Sounds like there is a pretty good potential for catching some evidence if all of this stuff is actually happening to you. Anyway, moving on. Next story is from Reddit user abused_dog. The post was titled, "Knocking Happening a Second Time at 3 a.m. in My Room?" I experienced some minor paranormal stuff as a kid, but nothing to this degree as a 20-year-old. A month ago, out of the blue, I heard 3 knocks happen on my wall to the right while I was in my room. Then after 2 seconds, 3 knocks on the wall left of me. I was shocked because it was daytime and there were people in my apartment. I just easily thought it had something to do with them. But tonight, something terrifying happened. I was laying in my bed on my phone at 3 a.m. exactly, and out of nowhere, I heard exactly 3 or 4 knocks on the wall in the corner. Exactly 3 or 4. I was confused and was trying to cope that it's just my imagination, but after a few seconds, 3 knocks happened again, and this time, there were extremely clear knocks just behind me, either on my wooden desk or the wall again. The knocks were clear as daylight. I immediately got out of bed and am sitting in my living room, afraid to go to sleep there again. What could this be? I'm not a Christian. Okay, so they're not a Christian. They really want you to know that. And they're really exact with their numbers. Exactly 3 or 4 knocks. So the first time they heard the knocks was in the daytime. But when they wrote the post, it was 3 a.m. and they had just heard the knocks. Not sure what them not being a Christian has to do with anything in this case. They also live in an apartment complex, so my mind immediately goes to the fact that you never know what people in other apartments are doing at any given hour, especially depending how thin the walls are between apartments, and it could be something completely harmless, but they are hearing it as a knocking, and at 3 a.m. I'd probably crap my pants too. Next story from Ashar458. My sister's teddy bear that she got on her 13th birthday says, "I love you," when you pull its string. It's usually on a shelf near the kitchen and out of reach of most people in the house. Only my brother's tall enough to reach it. So yesterday at 3 a.m. it turned on by itself. I thought it was just me, but it said, "I love you," 2 more times, and I got kind of freaked out. My brother was in the same room as me. I called my sister's phone, but she didn't pick up, so I went downstairs to see the bear. I checked on my sister to find her asleep. I didn't find anything suspicious, so as soon as I took my first step, I hear something fall behind me. I turn around to see the bear was now on the floor, facing me. So was this just a coincidence? Something even remotely paranormal has never happened in this house. So when I first read this one, I really thought it was creepy, legitimately creepy. Why do toys and stuffed animals get so creepy at night? Not just talking ones, but how many movies have you seen where they pan around a kid's room at night and every single toy looks like it wants to murder you in your sleep? The first thing I'll say about this story is, if this is your sister's bear, why is it normally on a shelf in the kitchen out of reach of your sister? Either somebody really doesn't want the sister to get a hold of this bear, or I don't know. I can't explain that part of the story. Also, the volume of this bear must be freaking loud if this person was woken up at 3 a.m. by a teddy bear that was downstairs, not even on the same floor as them. You went downstairs to see what's up. Sister is asleep right next to the bear and didn't wake up, even though this person heard it all the way upstairs. And then she turns around and the bear falls to the ground. The bear talking, that part could have been a dream, or could have been an auditory hallucination upon waking up at the hour that they did, or could have just been a malfunction of the bear. It's an electronic device. Even if it has a pull string, things can go wrong with those mechanisms. But then the person went downstairs and the bear that they thought they heard falls without interaction from anything. Maybe a loose floorboard. User turned around and stepped on it and it jiggled the table or shelf that the bear was on just enough to make it fall over. Possibly. Who knows? It could very well be something more. Honestly, teddy bears are not all that stable unless they're weighted. If it had sand in the bottom of it or something to make it sit there quietly, maybe it would be more impactful, the fact that it fell over, because it would have had to have been knocked over. But we don't know that fact, so we can't really make any judgment there. Next story from Reddit user life_mystic. 3 knocks at 3 a.m. Another one. 3 knocks at 3 a.m. Recently, I had to move back in with my parents due to consequences of COVID-19. I have had a handful of experiences in my childhood home, but this is the most recent. Every morning at 3 a.m. since I moved here, it's been 6 months, I have awakened at 3 a.m. without fail. Most of these awakenings are without incident until a few days ago. It was like every other ungodly hour of the morning. Typically, I don't open my eyes as I wake up, but this time it was different. As I turned over, I heard a distinct, loud, and hearty knock, knock, knock. "Yes," I replied. I thought it was my son or daughter knocking on my bedroom door. I got out of bed, opened the door. No one was there. I ventured out into the kitchen. All lights were off, and the entire house seemed to be sleeping, even the dogs. I went back to bed, threw the covers on, and closed my eyes. Maybe I imagined it, but then again, knock, 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 just as loud and intentional sounding as the first. I decided to close my eyes and go to sleep. I felt no fear, strange feelings of dread, but I found it really strange. It could not have been the pipes or the water heater, which is clear on the other side of the house, so I'm curious as to what that was. When I was a little girl, I would hear disembodied voices from time to time while I grew up here, and once when I was in grade school, I saw a demonic face in the doorway of the bathroom. I still remember as clear as day until now, but I have experienced nothing for years until the recent knocking. I've decided to start recording my sleep with a noise recording app. I hope to capture the knocks with audio proof next time, if there is a next time. Is there any significance to 3 knocks? I really liked this story. There is a history of activity in the house, the pattern of waking up at 3 a.m. even when nothing happens, and the subtlety of the knocking is incredibly believable. The last question about whether or not there was any significance to the 3 knocks sent me rushing to the internet, the magical internet, and I found some pretty significant and dark things regarding 3 knocks. There is, in fact, an old superstition that when a person hears 3 knocks, it means someone has died. There are different iterations of this where the knocks mean someone is going to die or someone has already died, etc. Since the knocks in a series of 3 are typically associated with an unfortunate occurrence, they are sometimes known as the 3 knocks of doom. Ireland and Scotland both have traditions that state 3 knocks on a door or 3 taps on a window, primarily when heard at regular intervals lasting for 2 minutes, means death. Several Native American tribes believe that when the thumping of a stick 3 times on the ground is heard, or the beating of a drum 3 times, it means someone will die. With regard to strictly American lore, those who hear them also state that they were very loud, or that when they are heard, they caused a feeling of fear or creepiness, which the author of this last Reddit story did not experience. Most often, the knocks or taps are heard on doors or windows, but other stories mention knocks on walls or even sounds that seem to come from inside the walls or from every corner of the room. The cause for the knocks is never found. For instance, if a door is opened, no one is there. One example that some of you might be familiar with is the Bell Witch haunting in Adams, Tennessee. At the onset of the activity, this family experienced strange knocks and taps within their home. They were always heard in a series of 3. The story ends with the family's father, John Bell, dying under mysterious circumstances. So why 3? Well, similar to what we stated earlier about why 3 a.m. is considered the devil's hour, because the use of the number 3 is a mockery of the Holy Trinity. This isn't to say that every single belief regarding 3 knocks is bad. There are those who associate it with the expression knock on wood, where knocking 3 times is thought to keep your luck from leaving you. If this Reddit user had something waking them at 3 a.m. that had bad intentions, perhaps something else with good intentions was knocking in order to give her luck and keep her safe. There is obviously something going on at her childhood home, but tough to make a decision on whether those knocks are good or bad. Either way, I'd probably be sleeping with the lights on. The idea of the 3 a.m. witching hour is not new, but as with pretty much everything, the expansion of social media has led to an increased interest in the topic. Particularly back in 2017, the 3 a.m. challenge really started to gain traction on YouTube, where people would post videos of themselves doing normal things at 3 a.m. and trying to make contact with the paranormal. Of course, many of these videos were edited to seem as creepy as possible because you gotta get those views. But the good thing about heightened awareness and interest in things like this is because then more people are trying to find answers. So let's look at some of the theories from all corners of thought. Psychics. Psychics believe that the veil between our world and the spirit world is lifted at this time, and our relaxed state of mind, especially in a deep state of sleep, may be more susceptible to paranormal activity. Paranormal researcher Ben Eno stated that the belief in such a time could be fueling its power. If you think something spooky is going to happen, something spooky will probably happen. Now, I would alter that statement to say, if you think something spooky is going to happen, you are more likely to interpret things that happen as spooky. Believing something will happen isn't going to literally make it happen, at least not for the majority of the population, but it will absolutely influence how your brain interprets things. Xavier Remington, the founder and president of Mystic Investigations, said, "Legend has it, if you wake up at exactly 3 a.m. for no reason in a state of terror, then the devil has paid you a visit, literally or in your dreams." So what is the truth? Is 3 a.m. the time of day when evil spirits run and play? Or are our sleep patterns just sticking us in REM sleep at just the right time to fill our heads with creepy stuff that isn't there? Well, this is the paranormal, and that means there are no hard, fast answers. If you ask me, it's a bit of both. Having been someone who experiences sleep paralysis on a semi-regular basis, I know that is a very possible explanation of why someone would see something or hear something at strange hours of the night. I'll conclude with a story of my own, which to this day still gives me chills when I think about it. The story involves a YouTube video that was uploaded on August 31st of 2017 on a channel called Slapped Ham. The video is titled 6 Disturbing YouTube Channels We Dare You to Visit. I believe this was near the beginning of 2020 in January or February when this took place. I couldn't sleep. It was really late at night. Didn't know what time it was, just knew that I couldn't sleep. I was tossing and turning, and so I decided to stop trying. To avoid waking my wife, I went to the bathroom and started watching YouTube videos. Naturally, I was watching scary videos because it's what I do, and this particular video popped up in my suggested videos, so I got to watching it, and about halfway through the video, at about 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the guy started talking about a channel called 2H32. I'm not going to spoil what is on the channel if you want to check it out, but it was pretty creepy stuff what I was seeing here. But it wasn't the content that really freaked me out. The basis of the channel is that everything takes place at 2:32 a.m. So naturally, when he is done talking about the channel, I minimize YouTube on my phone and check the clock. I kid you not, it was exactly 2:32 a.m. So, statistics people out there, what are the chances that I would have insomnia that night, YouTube would recommend that video to me as a suggested video, I would click on it to watch it, and would end up watching that part of the video at exactly the time that is referenced in the video? My guess is that the chances are pretty slim. I immediately closed the YouTube app, turned off my phone, and went back to bed, although any hope I had for sleep was gone. I laid awake for the next 2 to 3 hours, scared out of my freaking mind. I kept thinking that I was hearing things and seeing things move in the darkness. My imagination was going crazy. What if I had just somehow let something in? I was absolutely terrified. The fact that it was in the middle of the night and dark and I was sleep deprived, I'm sure played a big part in that. But I could not get the coincidence of it out of my head. I never went back and finished the video. I never actually went and checked out the channel 2H32. In fact, I had a hell of a time just trying to find the video when I decided to mention it in this podcast episode. Because I had never gone back to look at it since, I couldn't remember exactly when I watched it. I kept thinking that it was a Chills video because I'm a big fan of that guy, so I kept going back through my watch history at every Chills video I'd watched and combing through them for that section. I spent literal weeks searching through my watch history with various terms and finally just searched disturbing and found it. Watching it again in the middle of the day was not nearly as scary, and I was like, why did this freak me out so bad? But that is what happens at that hour. I know 2:32 is not 3 a.m., but it's pretty darn close, and I was convinced that an evil presence had just stepped into my life at that moment. So what's your 3 a.m. story? If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment. Let me know what freaky things have happened to you at 3 a.m. Shoot me an email with your 3 a.m. story at havehappynightmares@gmail.com. Hit me up on TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram at havehappynightmares, or on Twitter at YTHappyNightmare with no E on the end. I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment and leave a review. It's so helpful in letting others discover what you are already enjoying. Visit our sister YouTube channel, Happy Nightmares, for chilling horror fiction, true tales of the paranormal, dark instrumental music, and more of the creepy content you crave. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, and as always, happy nightmares.
This has been the Happy Nightmares podcast. Visit our YouTube channel, Happy Nightmares, for more of the creepy content you crave.